Hi everyone, in this video from the Army Painting Horus Heresy series we're going to be covering one of my personal favourite legions, the Alpha Legion. The Alpha Legion quite helpfully can be painted in just about any colour you want, but I think it was these guys that really popularised that clear coats over metal scheme when Forge World first showed us to them. So that's the type of scheme that I'm going to cover in this video, but I reckon I'll probably get through a few more variations in the future as well. With regards to sub-assemblies for the model, I've left the shoulder pads glued on for this one because they're going to be the same colour. I've just blue tacked in the bolter so I can get to the chest easier, and on these Mark IVs I usually blue tack the back on so I can get to the straps when I need to paint those easier as well. But blue tack it all together and do these first few stages as a whole model means we can get a nice consistent colour and light source and everything across the model. So when we're doing a clear scheme, we're going to pre-shade using metallics. So we need a really nice solid dark steel silver coloured base coat. For this I'm going to use Vallejo Model Colour Series Gunmetal Grey. I'm spraying at about 25 psi here, and I've thinned it maybe 1 drop of thinner to 2 or 3 drops of paint. Couple of coats and you can see it already gives us a really nice base to work from. It's very important as well on these clear schemes that we don't leave any of the black showing. We want silver in the shadows so it's always reflective. For our highlight we're going to use a really bright silver. In this case I've used Vallejo Model Air Steel, and this is used like we would white in a black and white pre-shade. So I'm focusing on the areas where I think the light will reflect as if it was coming from above, and I'm just making sure that that's consistent across the front and the back of the model. So I've picked a simple light source from above, slightly to the right as we look at the front of him and slightly to the right as we look at the back of him. Then follow the shapes of the model. So if it's a shoulder pad, we're going to do a more sphere shaped highlight. If it's his leg, we do a more cylindrical shaped highlight. It can be quite tricky to see these under the light. So if you're struggling, just turn the light off, look at it in the natural light. You'll soon figure out where it's meant to go. But there we go, nice quick pre-shade. Onto the colour. Getting the colours right is pretty key when you're using clears. Use whatever mix you like. I've used a mix here of 7 drops of clear blue to 2 drops of clear green, and then I've thinned that mix 3 drops of thinner, so Tamiya XXth thinner, to the Tamiya paints. It's completely up to you what recipe you use. All I would say is make up a big batch and take note of how many layers you apply if you're going to paint an army, because it can be quite tricky to get a consistent finish of colour across an army if you don't do this. Really important when we're using these clears with the Tamiyas that we give them time to dry between layers. So when you see me taking the model away, I'm using a hairdryer to dry it. The colour will dry a lot more solid than it goes on, and if you go a step too far it can really change the look. If you wanted to, you could probably use contrast paints to get a very similar effect to this, but I wanted to use the original that the Forge World guys used back when they developed the scheme, and it was these paints. Done quite a few armies using this recipe for people. Always looks fantastic on the tabletop. Now we could just leave it as is, that's absolutely fine, it's a nice looking cool colour, but it'd be nice to push the shadows a bit more and also introduce that idea of what colour exactly are these guys. You know, are they a green, are they a blue, are they a turquoise? So what we're going to do is apply Tamiya clear blue into the shadows. And again, when I take him off camera, I'm just using a hairdryer. So this time I've thinned it maybe 2 to 3 drops of thinner to paint, so XXth thinner and Tamiya clear blue, and I'm just aiming in the shadows. So this is to slightly darken them, but also to really muck about with that colour shifting sort of idea that we can have with them. I've seen a few people use colour shift paints to do Alpha Legion, and I think it can look cool by all means, but I quite like the extra level of control we have by choosing the colours ourselves and choosing when the colour changes rather than having that dictated to us by the light. So here he is. I think that's about 3 layers in the shadows there, and it was about 3 to 4 layers for the main colour. And we've got this really nice sort of weird turquoisey blue-green colour. Tamiya clears dry very glossy anyway, but it's good practice. Just give the model a couple of coats of polyurethane gloss. And that's in preparation for the next 2 stages. So I'm going to do a pin wash and I'm going to apply my decals. Now for the pin wash, really simple, a nice, quite high contrast pin wash for this. I'm going to use burnt umber. So this is Artist's Oil Paint by Winsor Newton, burnt umber. It's a nice high grade oil paint so that when we thin it down a lot or dilute it a lot with Santinor thinner here, it won't separate out. So mix it up, check it on your pot, looks good to go. Now we've done a separate video all about pin washing and what you can use, and I'll chuck the link up in the corner here. But you can see that gloss varnish is allowing us to take advantage of capillary action, and the paint is wicked off the end of our brush into all those recesses. And it's going to provide us with a ton of contrast and definition, which is great, but also because of the colour, it's going to give us a bit of dirt and grime. Few people have asked what happens if you get it on an area you don't want. Well, just wipe it off with your finger like that, or a Q-tip. So I've left him overnight, and I popped the decals on as well at the same stage because it was glossed. So this has dried overnight. We can see the oil. It's giving us this lovely bit of definition and dirt, and he's starting to look pretty cool now. This is where we decide on our final finish of the model. Now I didn't want him super glossy, so I've used Ammo by MIG, Lucky Varnish, and I've gone for satin here. If I was mixing this up myself, it was probably about 4 drops of gloss to 1 drop of matte, something like that. It was a glossy satin. Now all the areas on the model that are going to be black or metal, I'm going to base coat using Vallejo Model Colour Black. I totally messed up the next bit of filming. The ribbed bits of the armour I highlighted with Vallejo Dark Grey, Vallejo Model Colour Dark Grey and Vallejo Model Colour French Mirage Blue. For the silver parts of the model, I'm going to stick to that sort of blue theme, and I'm going to base coat them using Scale 75 black metal, and then we're going to highlight them using GW Grey Knight Steel. Both those paints have a lovely blue tint to them. So it just keeps reinforcing that really cool armour colour we've got. The eye lenses, not only because it's a good contrast, but obviously these guys are baddies, depending on who you listen to. We're going to base coat the eye lenses using Khorne Red by Games Workshop. Then I'm going to highlight them using one of my favourite new paints, which is Vallejo Model Colour Vermillion. There you can see the offending beanie going into shot. That's what ruined the previous shot. I think it'll make an appearance a few more times, so sorry about that, guys. So here we're just highlighting towards the centre of the head and along the bottom of the lens. And then finally, a little white dot in the opposite corner. As usual, the paint had dried by the time I got there when I'm doing the filming. So rather than force it to come off and splodge it all over the model, you reapply, clean the brush, new bit on, and there we go. Nice little reflective dot. Here he is. It's looking pretty nice, good colour, but this is Heresy, so we need to get him dirtied up. There's obviously tons you can do with weathering, but a few core techniques that we can use on our models that offer a huge amount of bang for your buck, time-wise versus results. We're going to take a dark brown, so I'm going to use GW RHINOX Hide, and using a sponge, I'm just going to press against the areas of the armour where I think wear and tear will occur, so sort of all the edges, particularly lower down the model. I touched off the paint, the sponge on a piece of tissue before I touched the model, just to get the excess paint off. But take your time with this stage. Hopefully you can see already how quick it is to be able to get this army to this stage. Now we can spend that bit of extra time just making them look really dirty, battle worn. Just work your way around, and if you want to go in with your brush as well and create a few scratches with the brown, it's a good time to do that as well. Taken my brush, I've taken a silver, in this case GW Leadbelcher, any silver you want, doesn't really matter. And I'm just going to brush paint this along some of those edges to represent really fresh chips on the armour. When you use these candy schemes, these clear schemes, you can be pretty full on with your weathering. They take weathering well. You have to be quite extreme with it to even see some. And now I'm going to use my Artist Oil Colour Burnt Umber again to create some streaks. And again, I've done a whole video on this. So I'm just using the neat oil and a clean brush to start shaping the streaks. And generally I'm going to have these coming down from areas that I've already painted damage on. And then using the same wash as we did earlier to pin wash with, I'm going to go over all the metals. And I'm going to go over some other parts of the model. And this is because the brown we used earlier obviously got sprayed with a satin varnish, so we get a nicer matte finish this way. And here he is. Once that oil's dried, you can see it gives us that lovely different finish on the dirt, and I've mainly focused it on the areas where there is a lot of damage. The only other thing I've done to the model is applied a simple gaming base, and I will put the list of powders that I used in the description below. But it's just using the technique that I cover in our simple YouTube basing video. Now, I hope you've enjoyed this interpretation of the Alpha Legion scheme. As I say, I feel like it's the original Clears scheme. It's a scheme I've done on an awful lot of armies, both for myself, for charity and for other people, and it's a lot of fun. It looks fantastic on the tabletop, really, really impactful, pretty gaudy, which is kind of nice. And I like when you can temper that with plenty of weathering. You get that real sort of Space Knight vibe, but still sort of in keeping with the setting. Consider checking out some of the other recipes we've got in the Army Painting Horus Heresy playlist on the channel. And if you've enjoyed the video, hit the like button. If you want to see more from us, hit subscribe. If you want to keep up to date with everything we're doing here on YouTube, hit that little notifications bell as well. And I'll see you next time.